Welcome back to the Home Service Legends podcast with your host, Mitch Boerner. And it's the end of 2025, start of 2026. And I thought this would be a great opportunity to share with you my final moments of 2025 and the 5 business lessons that I learned this year. I think every year we learn. I'm going to say there's probably, I'm going to give 5. But I'd say there's always one key takeaway, right? In business, it might be, I'm pretty sure in year 1 we learned like it was price, right? We were priced wrong, and that was a hard lesson to learn. That was, first year. Second year we learn about, having the right amount of staff or the right amount of technicians or the right amount of setup, whatever it was. But I think ultimately in every year, I think there's one big lesson that we learn. And let me share those lessons with you today. So coming in at number 5 is finding the few numbers that actually matter. This is a great, the podcast is a really cool way to share ideas and to share views and to share opinions. And I think if there's one thing that I hope is that everybody, who sees this throws in their 2 cents, agrees with me, disagrees with me. And I think it's a great opportunity for me to disagree with myself in the future or agree with myself in the future, because documenting this exact moment in time, allows us to come back and have a look at, where we are in the future and what we think of what we thought back then and what we think now and were we right, were we wrong. So I think this is really cool. So there's no right or wrong to this, but, here's my number 5. Find the numbers that matter. So I'm calling this the onion method around the office. And basically that methodology is that, we kind of only peel back the onion to the point where it's looking good, right? So if it's looking not so good, we're gonna kind of peel it back a little bit more. And I think my takeaway from this is that we've noticed this year that you can have, in business, typically when you start out, you have no data, right? You have no stats on your business. You don't really know what to keep. You don't have stats. You're just trying to stay afloat. And as business starts, you slowly look at more and more numbers. And I find that it goes up to this peak where all of a sudden, couple years in, you find yourself with dashboards which have 7 pages and 3,000 metrics. And none of it really does anything for you, because ultimately you just end up getting like analysis paralysis, where it's just like it's too much to look at. It's too much. You don't know whether it's right. You say to your business partner, your friends, your family, your technician, whatever it is, you go like, oh, look at those numbers today. And like deep down, you're like, I don't know if those are 100% right. Like it doesn't feel right, especially like sales numbers. They can be really tricky. You'll see your sales numbers and you'll go, yeah, good month. And then you go, but man, I'm looking at the bank and there's nothing in there, or there's been no growth in the bank account. So I think as you get to that too many, if you're anything like us, you go too many, then you go none again, because you were paralyzed by the idea of so many numbers. And then you come back to like this Zen state where you're like, what actually matters? What actually matters? You may be there, you may be past there, you might be at the bottom here, you might be at the top with too much data. But I found that there's this nice like sort of J-curve that comes at the end where you kind of just like pop back up to a place where you're like, I feel really comfortable now. And those numbers, I'll give you an example. In our marketing division, we were having these meetings where we're like, what are the let's look at Google Ads, for example. What are the impressions today? What's the click-through rate? What's the clicks? What's the sentiment? And we were going through all of these numbers and all of these things, and we were basically just like regurgitating information in a meeting. And it was hard because it was like, we want impressions to go up. It's like, well, we don't really need them to go up if conversions go up. And it was so much back and forth. It was like, what is the absolute dominant number here? And the dominant number for us at present time is ROAS. It's return on ad spend. Ultimately, for us, that is all that matters, because if you look at that one number and you say, you want to be running at a ROAS of 5 or a ROAS of 10 or whatever it might be, if you say 5 and you're running at 5 or you're running at 6, unless you're in a time in your business where you're going to actively work on improving that number, or you're like us that has a small marketing team where it's like, well, I can't work on that number every day. We have to build other campaigns. We have to be working on this. We have to be working on some rebranding. We do this and that. So like today, the number is at 6, and I'm happy with that, right? The target is 5 and it's at 6, for example. So if we look at that one KPI, that one metric, we don't really need to delve any deeper into the onion because this layer looks good, right? If ad spend was going up through the roof behind that ROAS, would I be concerned about that? Probably not, because my ROAS is right. Because if my multiple is good, and if for those of you who don't understand what ROAS is, return on ad spend, so essentially, you put $1 into Google Ads, and then you win a job that pays you $10, you've got a 10x ROAS, right? Because you put $1 in, and then you won a job that has a 10x return on it. It's a little more complicated than that when we look at leads, conversions, things like that. But just for the most part, understand that it's the basic metric. So if ad spend is going up, which to some degree is concerning, it's kind of not if my ROAS is right, because if I've gone from spending $1,000 a day to $10,000 a day, then if my number is at 10 for my ROAS, well, I've gone from making $10,000 a day, doing $10,000 a day in revenue off my $1,000, and now I'm spending $10,000. Well, I'm actually doing $100,000 in revenue. So that's okay. I don't need to drill too much further down into that. And I think the reason I say this is because I think, and again, I could be proven wrong in the future, but ultimately, clarity is the key here, right? Clarity and confidence in your business. The more metrics you have, I feel like the less clarity you have, and to some degree. And I'm not saying that that's you sometimes need all the metrics, right? But I think if you've got some really important metrics that you track, then sometimes that's enough. You don't need the voodoo of all the other numbers and what am I looking at here? I'm looking at this, and then I'm looking at that. I'm looking at this. It's like, pick the numbers that matter. Pick the numbers that move the needle, that are important, and serve the greater causes of your business, and look at those. And the reason I feel so strongly about this is I feel like a lot of the data is not correct in most businesses. And I'm saying that because, again, making a accusation here, but ultimately I know it isn't, because it's not in my business, and I deal with other businesses all the time, and we look at their data and it's not right either. And they go, oh, that's interesting. Alan Rohr shared with us this year, and I'll talk about it a bit later, but like this idea of getting it right, just like, is this right? Is this 100% right? So the less metrics that you're tracking, the easier it is to make sure that they're 100% right. Because in order to track, for example, sales data, you can go to your platform, whatever you use, your CRM, and you can be like, show me the sales. But realistically, you need to track those kind of manually to make sure they're right. Like you need to do like a sample on those, right? You need to check the batch, because you quickly find, you hop in there, you're like, oh, hang on a second, there's a button clicked in the back end here, and jobs from this division are the sales number is including tax, and in this one it's not including tax. So we're getting like the numbers aren't actually right, or it's feeding in information from somewhere else, or invoices are doubling up, or whatever it might be. Like, you've got to go through and have a look. So if the less metrics you have to track, the more likely you are to have accurate metrics. Number two would be number 4. So we're going backwards from 5 to 4. If you use a system, learn how it actually works. And I'm sure we all use systems in our business, right? So whether that's your HR system, whether that's Xero, whether that's ServiceTitan, ServiceMate, whatever it is that you use in your business, it doesn't really matter. This year, a big lesson for us is stop and learn how it works properly, right? Stop and take a second to go, are we doing this right? Especially when something feels wrong. We notice this a lot with ServiceTitan. Like if something feels like, this is a bit like clunky, often we go back and we ask the question and we find out like, no, that's not how you're supposed to do that. There's a feature we can turn on. There's a button you can push. All of these things ultimately end up in a situation where if you learn how they work properly, you find your business gets amazing ROI on that, right? Like amazing. Stopping for a second to make sure that you're doing something right is incredible. So, that was a big lesson from this year. There was a few things in ServiceTitan. As you guys will learn, I'm a big fan of ServiceTitan. There was a few things that we just like weren't doing right, but this is because the platform is so big, our business is growing, things are happening, and we just purely didn't stop for a second to go like, hang on a second, this is not right. And now that we've done that, we've found so many incredible efficiencies in our business. When you see people complaining about the software that they're on or the software that they're using in forums and things like that, I would say there's a good chance, like there's some crappy products out there, but I would say for the most part, most of the time, people just haven't got the product set up right. They just haven't got the thing dialed in. It's not right. And I think a lot of products get a bad rap for that because, people make out like the product's garbage, and it's just not garbage. It's like, it's only as good as the user that's using it and the way that it's been set up. There was a great saying from my previous career that would always say like, what's the best CRM? And we'd say it's the one that you use, right? So it's the one that you use inside and out. It's the one that you understand. That's the best one, right? Because you can have a million CRMs, you can have a million platforms, you can have a million things. The best one is the one that you take the time to learn how to use and you make sure you use it well. Because you could be on an amazingly large platform like ServiceTitan, and you could get no value out of it if you don't set it up right. And you could be on ServiceMate, and you could have an amazing amount of success for it because you know it inside out. But I can tell you, if you transfer that thinking over to the bigger platform like ServiceTitan, and you really spend the time and invest in it, in getting it right and learning how it works, it's going to be sensational, right? And we've seen that. So getting those things right is absolutely key. Number 3 is consistency is everything. Never deviate from the process. I'm going to have people, I'm sure, going to say that I'm unreasonable about this. And this has been, I would say this has been a lot of the success that we've seen in the business, and why it's grown so fast is because we've been as diligent as we can be with process, right? We've tried to ensure that if we say something is the rule, if we say this is how this is, we try not to deviate from it. Particularly as business owners. Business owners are the worst. I'm sorry, but like we are. Like we'll set a rule and then we'll go, well, that rule applies to everybody except for me. And I think that can't happen in your business, right? You can't have rules for you and rules for everybody else. I think you've got to the rules are the rules, the SOP, the book, the handbook, the way the business runs, that's the way the business runs, and it can't have two sets of rules. Especially in the early days when you're in there every day. So, what do I mean by this? And I think one of the great examples of that consistency piece, and I give this all the time, is arrival windows, for example, right? If you're a business like ours that has arrival windows, so we can turn up in the AM or we can turn up in the PM, right? We give those two options to customers. That is an amazing system. It gives us the autonomy to move things around where we need it. It gives us the autonomy to prioritize more important jobs. If we're going to see somebody who's got a little tap drip that's been going on for 2 weeks and a hot water unit comes in, someone's got no hot water, it allows us to move that appointment forward because we're not rigidly locked into all these time slots, which benefits the customers ultimately, because if you stay with our service long enough, you'll be in that emergency status at some point. And when you are, we're going to prioritize you because we can move things around. When we were very rigid, when we offered very small time windows, we were locked to these, like, we'll be there at this time, we'll be there at this time. We also, like, I don't want to speak ill of the E-Myth because I think it's probably the greatest business book, one of the greatest business books ever written. But in there was a conversation about, like, what you should do, you should just be on time, right? And there was a conversation about a doctor's clinic and, like, why are they always not on time? Just be on time. And I really took that literally, and I loved it when we first started this business. We would say we'd be there at 10 a.m. and we would just be there at 10 a.m. The truck would be rolling up at 9:59, and it was sensational, but it was totally unscalable. It was so difficult to be there on time every time. And even if we were on time, like, it got to the point where it's like we were on time every time, but the people that really, like, if someone called us up with an emergency, we were on time to their emergency, but we were like 4 hours later than we could have been because we could have just done it right then and there. We could have gotten to them way earlier than we did. And people went without hot water some nights where it was like, cool, well, it's too late in the day to do it now. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not proud of that. I don't like having that situation happen, and we don't have it happen anymore. But anyway, long and the short of it is we have an AM and PM window. And, one of the greatest deviations is I'll take the AM window, but, not before 10. Just, can you just tell the guys not before 10? Yeah, sure. And we put that in, and then all of a sudden, boom, we've deviated. If that slips through the keeper and it's successful, we manage to make it successful, all of a sudden that goes from that happening once a month to once a week to once a day, to once in the AM and once in the PM. And it is one of those deviations where it's like, why do this? If we have a conversation, a little bit of a tough conversation with the customer and say, hey, look, if you want to ensure that we're there after 10 a.m., then let's book you in for the afternoon. Well, I want to go out in the afternoon. Okay, so let's book you in the AM. I cannot promise that we'll be there because it's done in order. So I can't promise it'll be after 10 a.m., but I don't want to disappoint you. So, like, if we are just running ahead of time, can we call you, blah, blah, blah. And most of the time people are like, yeah, it's fine. It's okay. I'll just get up a bit earlier. It's not the end of the world, but it ends up being okay. And half the time we land right on 10 o'clock or after 10. Sometimes it'll be 9:30. Sometimes it's a little earlier than that. But ultimately, a little tiny hard conversation got us to the place where it's like we didn't have to deviate from the process. And, I think the real danger is once that slips, it's like Pandora's box. Like, once that's open, it's like open all the time, right? If you do something, if you say to the team, everybody's needs to wear this uniform, and then somebody comes in with a different uniform, and you allow it, it's so amazing how quickly, and my guys will agree with this, so quickly everybody's wearing that odd uniform that's not part of the uniform. Everyone's wearing a different hat, or everyone's wearing shorts, or everyone's wearing, all of a sudden, will you let one person do it? And that's not to say, like, this is not a dictatorship, but ultimately, to some degree, there's rules and there's a process. So we have to stick to those rules and process. They were created for the greater good of the business and for the greater good of the team. We have to stick to them. So my takeaway for that is just do not deviate from the rules ever if you can avoid it. If you have to deviate, just make sure you make a big scene about it and say, look, we're deviating from this today. I just want everyone to understand why we're doing this, and we are not doing this again, right? We will not do this again. And I think you'll build an incredible business because of that. We had, in the beginning, we only serve a really small area here. And in the beginning, we had no work. Years ago, we had no work, and we would look at, High Pages and Angie's List and those like types of, websites, and we would see like, oh, there's a job in here, and it's like, it's just 5 minutes out of our range. And we decided not to take them on because it was deviating from the process. And, 3 years later, 4 years later, 98% of our calls and work is in one area. We have the ability now to just serve one area and continue to grow the business. But ultimately, in the beginning, it looked like that wasn't working, but it did work. It just takes time to nurture and build, and stay disciplined to protect yourself and protect the business and protect everybody that works in it. All right, number 2, never be ashamed to change your mind. And I've been on this bandwagon for a long time because early days I was definitely the kind of guy that changed career every 12 months. And I thought that I think other people made me feel like that was a curse, like that was a negative, like, oh, he's always chopping and changing, oh, he's always doing this, oh, he's always doing that. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that no, that's a superpower. It's an amazing power to be able to just go, I don't care what anybody else thinks. If I've done the numbers and I've done the stats, I might have said yesterday that this was the greatest idea that I've ever had. I'm quite comfortable coming in the morning and being like, I looked further into it, not the greatest idea I've ever had. I'll be totally honest with everybody. Sorry for that. Let's keep learning. Let's keep growing. But I don't have a problem anymore with just admitting when something was just not right. And I think it's a superpower. Like if we open up a new branch, or we open up a new division, or we open up something new, and the stats, the numbers, things just don't add up and they're just not right, then I'll shut it down. I don't care if we've spent money on it. Like, let's shut it down. Let's move on from it, because ultimately, it's that's like such a trap to be stuck in a world where I said this and now I have to stick to it. And I think that's not a consistency thing. That's just like, you have to let everybody know that you're open-minded, right? It's like almost having like a political party, right? If one year this party's making sense, then you might want to vote for them. Next time, if it's a different party that makes sense, then you might want to change your tune. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. It's bipartisanship, right? It's like being able to see both sides. And I think it's an incredible superpower to be able to just not get too emotionally attached, or not let ego drive your decisions. Sticking with a bad idea out of pride, like, it sounds, when you say it out loud, it sounds so bad. You want to stick with a bad idea out of pride? We've had, if you wrap your trucks, and then 6 months later, you meet somebody and they say, hey, I can transform the vision of your business, or the appearance of your business. They come back with a new logo, a new brand name, a new design, and you all agree that it looks great. Rewrap the trucks. There are people out there that would have been like, well, I can't do that because I just wrapped them 6 months ago. Who cares? Bite the bullet. If you got something better, do it. Because why and this is like, I'm not gonna say shoot myself in the foot, but like, I've been in this situation before with people on our team, and I love everybody on our team, but like, I've been in this situation where people feel like I'm chopping and changing stuff too often, or they get stressed out by the speed in which things change. But ultimately, like, if we sit in a meeting and we decide that something is not a good idea, why would we run it out for 6 months? Unless there was some sort of financial metric to it, like we have to run it out, otherwise we've got to let go of 12 people. That's fair enough. Okay, I don't want to do that. But like, if it's something as simple as, arrival windows, right? You use this, if this is an example, if you're currently running at, arrival windows of every hour, and you go, hey, Mitch, that's a pretty good idea, actually, AM, PM. Do it tomorrow. Get it done. Just implement it and get it done. Find a way, make sure there's no, look at the failure points, look at what could happen if we do this, but ultimately don't get yourself in a situation where you're super concerned about, the looking silly because you've come up with a new plan. If the stats are there, implement the new plan. Change the plan. And if you decide that you change to AM PM windows and statistically it doesn't work out, change it back. Doesn't matter. I think, I've changed my mind plenty of times and I'll change it plenty times more. I think it's an amazing asset. That doesn't mitigate your responsibility for you need to stick to stuff long enough to actually understand it. Don't chop and change with no stats. But if you come back to your team, if you tell them Google Ads is absolutely the way to go, and you give them the information, and then you go back home and you do some more information, and do some more research, and you find out, you know what, I was actually totally wrong about this. Come in the next morning, explain that to everyone. I was wrong about this, and new information has come to light, and here is the information, here's my findings. I think people appreciate that. What they don't appreciate is we're going to do Google Ads, we're going to focus on Google Ads, and then the next day you're like, where is the magnets? I thought we were doing magnets. No, we're doing Google Ads. No, but you say Google Ads. I changed my mind. Don't do that. That's not a good idea, right? But statistics-based decisions, I think, is incredibly powerful. And that brings us to number one. The number one lesson we learned this year is from the lovely Ellen Rohr, who came into our lives and changed our business this year for the good, for the greater good, and really gave me clarity in a space, in the accounting space, which was a space that I again was not. We had good numbers, but I'm not super comfortable in that area, and I think Ellen brought a lot of clarity to our business. And, we can talk about this more in depth at a later date. But ultimately, what she taught us this year was to ask the question, is it right? Is it right? Push on that button as many times as you can in your business. Is it right? Ask yourself, is it right? Whenever you're doing something, ask yourself, is it right? And it doesn't even have to apply to accounting. We apply this to everything, right? You could say, I'm good with my employees. I had a meeting with everybody. I had a meeting with that guy 2 weeks ago, and they go, "Hey, Mitch, that was 2 months ago." Oh, it's 2 months ago. Okay, that's not right. I didn't realize. You might look at your numbers and go, "Man, our sales numbers are doing great. These are all X tax, aren't they?" And they go, "Yeah." And you go and look at it and go, no, these are actually inclusive of tax, or some of them are and some of them aren't. It's like, okay, well, the number is wrong. This number I've been looking at every day is wrong. Okay, that's not good. You can go into your P&L and look at your numbers, look at where things are allocated. This is the greatest example was this year with Ellen. She got our P&L to a place where it was like, we just had top line revenue, and under that we had materials, and under that we had labor expenses, and then we had our gross margin, gross profit. And those were broken down into different divisions. If you know our business, we've got plumbing, electrical, and handyman. And we wanted to know, what was the revenue from plumbing? What was the materials cost of goods sold? And what was the labor, cost of labor for those employees that work in that division? And so on and so forth. And then underneath that, tell me if this is you. Underneath that, we would do things like, we have 10 trucks and 5 of them are for plumbing or whatever it might be, and 2 of them are for here and 2 of them. So we go, okay, 60% of the cost of the cars we're going to put on plumbing, and then 40% we're going to put, 20% we're going to put on plumbing, on electrical, and then 20% we're going to put on handyman. And to some degree, you'd be like, oh, cool. It's it's probably about right. But this comes back to the question of is it right? No, it's not. And if it's not right, then don't measure it. That's not the correct. Your revenue at the top, that'll be correct. You got to make sure that's correct, but it'll be correct. Your employment cost and your materials cost, those should be correct. Anything under that is going in the shared column. We're not breaking down the cost departmentally for cars and for we cooked a lunch today and we spent $100. So 60% is going to go to plumbing, 20% is going to go to electrical. I mean, it's just, we just need to know departmentally our gross profit and gross revenue, our gross margin. And then under that, it's just overhead. And this was one of the greatest things. We did break down some of the overhead stuff. So like Ellen helped us move from, for example, we just had like ads. And then we had Google ads. And she was like, oh no, let's go a bit deeper than that. Let's go Google ads. Let's go billboard ads. Let's go ads, phone ads. Let's go this, that, and the other. So we can actually see the breakdown of our marketing. So that's great, right? These things are cool. I really like that. But ultimately, some of the other stuff we compressed. So we were able to compress stuff, like we had like a line item was like motor vehicle loans, motor vehicle tolls, motor vehicle servicing, motor vehicle tires, or whatever it is. We collapsed that down into just motor vehicles. So like, okay, so some of this stuff we want to like double click and expand it. Then other stuff we just want to like box it down into something, nice and simple. So, if you got any questions about that, let me know. But that was my big takeaway from this year, was like, is it right? Go back and ask yourself, look at your P&L, look at your sales dashboard, look at whatever whatever metrics and information you're getting in your business every day, and ask yourself the question, is it right? I hope everybody has an amazing start to 2026. I'm super, super excited about this year, and I can't wait to chat with you all. Thank you for joining us on the first episode of this. I'll be having many guests over the year, and I'm super excited to bring this all to you. Have an amazing start to your 2026, and I'll see you all soon.